If someone missed the video in 9 parts, then a hint has been made for you in the upper right corner. Tamura Shigaraki became the commander-in-chief of the Supernatural Liberation Front, and the 9 people who stood with him on stage became his assistants, the managers of the armies of villains. Also at this meeting was the spy hero Hawk, who realized that he was already too late. However, since the fate of all of Japan now depends on him, he immediately reported all the information to the Security Committee. And now the most powerful battle between heroes and villains is coming. Based on this, a week goes by. Twice resorts to Hawkeye to ask him for advice on creating a creed, as he is now one of the commanders of the regiment that Shigaraki's army was divided into. All regiments are divided according to the similarity of quirks, and with the creed, Hawk offered Twice 2 options. The first option is freedom above all, and the current system must fall. Or the second option is to be completely devoted to Redestro. But Twice, whom the Hawk perceives as a kind person, if you do not pay attention to what he did, chose option 1. Hawk also spoke about the plans of the villains, where they want to immediately attack large cities and break the control system there in order to create areas of lawlessness, thereby opening the way for the villains into politics, where they will already generalize the topic of self-defense and distribute weapons to civilians. And when the laws stop working, everything will be decided only by force, and then Shigaraki will easily ascend the throne. So the heroes should not hesitate. Well, Hawk plans to take on Twice, as his quirk can create gigantic problems for the heroes. We were shown Mr. Dr. Kyudai Garaki, who is also the founder of the Gaga Hospital and one of the benefactors of the country. However, behind the screen of his kindness lies a real evil genius and the right hand of all for one. He told everyone about this from the report of the Hawk Chukachi. And he also told everyone about the hidden area in his hospital, where he conducts his experiments. Arresting Garaki is not a problem, but everything must be done so that the villains do not have time to strike back, and therefore a new operation called Evil is Over has begun. The heroes of the first squad, led by the prospector, must break into the hospital and grab Garaki and everything in the hidden area. And the second detachment of heroes, led by Strilok, must break into the Ganges mansion, 80 kilometers from the hospital. This is the secret hideout of the front, and these operations will have to take place simultaneously. In this connection, the Strelka detachment, with its quirks with massive damage, will go in the forward detachment with a whole bunch of teachers and heroes. And Prospector, Heizawa, and the other heroes headed to the hospital. The main characters Bakugu, Midoriua, Shoto, and other schoolchildren are in the support squad, which will deal with the evacuation of people from the hospital area. And based on all this, the heroes immediately broke into the hospital, and having taken Mr. Doctor, turned off Aizawa's quirk for him. But it turned out that it was only a clone made by Twice. The real doctor at that time was near Shigaraki. And since the transformation of that one has not yet been completed, and the fact that thousands of quirks and new weapons have been accumulated here, Mr. Doctor decided not to give up the hospital without a fight. In this connection, he activated the most powerful advanced Nomu, and even other Nomu for extras. And Garaki himself tried to escape with the help of spears and the quirk of Kurogiri's teleporter. But the hero Rabbit Mirko suddenly appeared, which the prospector sent here, and she immediately destroyed the teleport and thereby cut off the doctor's retreat. However, after she was taken into a trap by the activated advanced Nomu, who have their own thinking. And they are made from the bodies of fierce villains who seek revenge on the heroes, and they even know their names. In this connection, they began to fight with Mirko. And while Prospector and Aizawa, combining their quirks, tried to break through to the hidden zone through the gnome and help Mirko, she began to receive a few blows, where only her incredible physical abilities and reflexes saved her. And the rest of the advanced Nomu stood in the way, to which the remaining 6th hero armor first came, and only after the Prospector, along with Aizawa and others, where the Prospector immediately went to help Mirko and destroyed one of the Nomu. In this connection, Mirko, bypassing Nomu, was able to get injured to her goal, the doctor. But when she saw Shigaraki, she immediately tried to disconnect him from the system. But she only managed to leave a crack on the case with Shigaraki, and after that she was pierced by her quirks to Nomu. However, the Prospector was able to save her and cauterize her wounds, and she told everyone about Shigaraki. Meanwhile, the female Nomu figured out with her brain that their quirks weren't working because of Aizawa's eyes, so they started attacking him. And Mick and Laserman took advantage of this and went after the doctor to stop him. But the doctor managed to press the button to resurrect Shigaraki, based on which Mick crushed his case with his sound and Shigaraki's lifeless body fell to the ground. After that, Mick grabbed the doctor and dragged him to calm Noma with his voice, while Laserman remained with Shigaraki's body. Also, while Mick was carrying the doctor, he said that Shigaraki's body was not yet finished and he had not gone to another world, and he only needed to be resurrected. And he also told him about his quirk, which allows him to live 2 or 3 times longer than an ordinary person. And now this doctor is already 120 years old, and copies of this all-for-one quirk support their body. Meanwhile, Shigaraki, in his mind, was in the world with a bunch of hands and memories of his loved ones. They seemed to be trying to shield Shigaraki from all-for-one, but Shigaraki ended up rejecting their help. At that moment, the network shorted out, and Shigaraki was electrocuted, causing him to come to life. Laserman immediately tried to attack him, but Shigaraki was stronger and destroyed him, and also took his cloak for himself. After regaining consciousness, Shigaraki began to destroy and split everything around with his quirk. A couple of minutes before these events, the Strelka squad broke into the front mansion through the cement penetration of Cementus and blocked all exits from it. The shooter with his quirk attacked the villains in the lungs, and a powerful battle began. However, the skeptic realized that there was a spy in their ranks, and therefore he began to check all the recording cameras with his quirk and realized that it was Hawk, who at that time took twice with his feathers so that he would not use his quirk. He does not plan to destroy him, but will only restrain him so that he does not create an army of clones. And he also told Twice that everything he did and said was only for the sake of infiltrating the villains. Well, Twice realized that it was his fault that the Hawk was able to infiltrate here, since it was he who brought him. And he, on emotions, began to create clones, which the Hawk destroyed without any problems. He also warned him that even though he considers Twice his almost friend, he will do anything for his cause, even to destroy Twice. Twice continued to try to escape from him and help his other allies, but the Hawk did not let him do it and even damaged him. However, Twice continued his attempts, and he also called the heroes dirt, because they do not have real feelings like in their bandit brotherhood. After that, Hawk realized that Twice could only be stopped by destroying him, and he was about to do it, but suddenly he was attacked from behind by Dabby, who was about to burn the Hawk, not even paying attention to the fact that Twice was nearby. The Hawk immediately assessed the situation and realized that Twice was no longer so dangerous, and now he himself had to get out of here or Dabby would burn him. And Dabby tried to do it, but the Hawk managed to dodge and even attack in response. Well, Twice, by this time, got out onto the balcony and bleeding red liquid was able to save Compress and Toga. He said goodbye to them and went to another world from the loss of the red liquid. Meanwhile, Dabby continued to fry the Hawk, and he also said that he mourns for Twice, because with his departure to another world, Dabby's dream moved away. It turned out that Dabby knows the real name of the Hawk, with whom he said goodbye a long time ago. Dabby also said that he doesn't care about the League of Villains and just continues Stein's work. He was about to destroy the Hawk, but a couple of minutes before, Takayami, having seen their battle, was able to escape from Fat Gum and head to this place, where he eventually managed to save the Hawk, who was already unconscious. And there Dabby said that it was the Hawk that destroyed Twice. Since Takayami's shadow was weak due to the fire, he barely managed to escape from Dabby, but he jumped after them and almost fried them. However, he was thwarted by the snowman, who was fighting Lady Gora, whom he attacked and knocked out. This allowed Takayami to regroup, and grabbing Hawk, carried him to the doctors. Cementus took on the snowman, while Juza and Kamori helped with their mass attacks to liquefy the ground and cover everyone with mushrooms. Meanwhile, Deku and the others were already finishing the evacuation from the hospital area. And there, just after the resurrection of Shigaraki, Deku began to hear voices in his head. This was the first carrier of One for All. He said that the strength of the enemy has increased and that a retaliatory strike is coming, and Deku must stop him. And immediately after that, that same massive splitting from the awakened Shigaraki began. He split everything around, including those very advanced Nomu. The heroes grabbed each other and began to run away, and in order to save Aizawa, the armor sacrificed his life. And literally in just a couple of minutes, everything around the hospital was destroyed by Shigaraki. Well, the heroes continued to evacuate people by all possible means, and also after Shigaraki contacted the Gigantomachia, which was under the mansion. He ordered the giant to act as Shigaraki wants to destroy everything. After that, Shigaraki took a few surviving quirk-depriving bullets, but the prospector immediately attacked him and tried to destroy him. But Shigaraki was able to dodge and nearly split Endeavor. It also turned out that he has a frenzied regeneration, and he also let slip that he wants to get the one-for-all quirk. He also had a built-in ragdoll quirk, which helps to determine the distance and weaknesses of enemies. He saw Deku and flew towards him. The guy, realizing what was happening, and hearing through the Endeavor's microphone that Shigaraki needed one for all, he began to run away from people so as not to endanger them. Bakugo ran with him, as he wants to repay Shigaraki's debt for All Might's departure. He also doesn't want to be inferior in strength to Deku. Well, Deku, at least through the prospector who pursued Shigaraki, confirmed that Shigaraki was pursuing him. However, the villain realized that the heroes communicate with each other and therefore made electromagnetic waves and destroyed all communication around them. It also turns out that during the splitting he kept some capsules with Nomu, and with these waves he activated them. And therefore Nomu began to crawl out, and the heroes had to fight them. And Shigaraki, in the next few seconds, got to Deku and Bakuga, from whom Gran Torino saved. Shigaraki was then taken over by Ryuko, the prospector, and the wounded Aizawa, whose life is now very important to defeating Shigaraki. He immediately turned off his quirks, and Prospector was about to burn him. But it turned out that Shigaraki continued to fly, since this is not his quirk, but the usual wave of his hands. Meanwhile, Gran Torino explained to the guys that the two of them could not defeat the improved Shigaraki. And he also said that they miscalculated with the speed of Shigaraki, because it turns out that no one can cope with his speed, which means they will not be able to catch up. Therefore, they will fight with him here as long as Aizawa's quirk works. He also warned Deku that Shigaraki had been given the all-for-one quirk and could steal the quirks and pass them on to others. However, by this time, Shigaraki was able to repel all of the Endeavor's attacks without any quirks by throwing him at Ryuko and slamming them into the ground. After that, he immediately switched to Aizawa so that he would not interfere with him, and he almost destroyed it, but suddenly Deku appeared with all his might and attacked him. Deku then grabbed Shigaraki for Bakugo to pierce him with his powerful attacks, but he freed himself and counterattacked both guys. Prospector then compared Shigaraki's strength to All Might's. A voice sounded in the villain's head and told him to get one for all, and Shigaraki, unexpectedly for everyone, said that Deku would become his younger brother. Shigaraki himself was shocked, because it was not him who said it, it was his all-for-one mentor, whom Shigaraki is going to surpass. Gran Torino joined the fight, who could fight with him on an equal footing in speed, because his grandfather had once trained the All Might himself. But Shigaraki still seemed to be on a completely different level. He almost immediately knocked out the old man. Bakugo, Deku, and Endeavor then took turns attacking Shigaraki, and even though he seemed to have received quite good damage, he began to get even more angry. The prospector tried to burn him again, but he dodged and was hit by Gran Torino, whose legs he injured. We are shown memories where Nana Shimura, for the sake of saving the world, abandoned her son, who became the father of Shigaraki. She did all this to keep all-for-one from getting to them, and she even destroyed all the data about it and forged documents. But as we can see, it didn't work. After that, we were returned to reality, where Shigaraki pierced the Gran Torino, and then he took out a bullet that cancels quirks from his pocket. Seeing this, Ryuko and Deku tried to stop him, but the villain managed to throw a bullet, which ended up in Aizawa's leg, and he, in order not to lose his strength, cut off his leg with a bullet. Meanwhile, near the mansion, Cementus continued to fight against the snowman, and Dabi came to compress, who said that Togu, having learned about Twice's departure from life, turned into a hero and went to take revenge on them. And immediately after, Gigantomachia crawled out of the ground. He grabbed everyone who was from the League of Villains and rushed at breakneck speed towards Shigaraki. Lady Gora tried to stop him, but he pushed her aside with no problem. Midnight and Wooden Kamui tried to stop him, but Compress prevented them by throwing giant debris on them. And since Midnight received heavy damage, she turned to Yoirozu to create and distribute anesthetics to everyone so that they would lull the giant who was just running in their direction. Well, the villains came running to Midnight itself, and as a result, we will not see our beauty again. Yoirozu began creating anesthetics, and in order to keep the giant in place, they softened the ground with the help of Juz's power. Yoirozu also threw dynamite into it, and in the end it all worked, but the villains on his back began to interfere with the guys. They decided to attack Kirishima with accumulated electricity, but he was knocked out by compress. And right after Gigantomachia sneezed, and Dabi added fire to this, thereby setting fire to a giant piece of forest and getting rid of the school children. However, Ashido was still able to break through the fire, and she almost threw an anesthetic into the giant's mouth. But he seemed to come to his senses and abruptly switched to school children. And he almost destroyed Ashido, but Kirishima was able to protect her, who was also able to climb the giant and throw the anesthetic into his mouth. After that, professional heroes flew in and started a fight with a giant who began to transform, and as a result, he knocked out all the heroes. But before that, the hero Majestic managed to save the school children. Well, the giant continued on its way, destroying everything in its path. Meanwhile, the fight with Shigaraki continued, where after cutting off his leg, Aizawa passed out and thus stopped using his quirk. Shigaraki immediately decided to end this fight, but he was pushed back by Shoto. Then Deku, out of anger, was able to use 100% of his strength, and therefore began to attack Shigaraki. And to prevent him from touching the ground and activating his decay, Deku grabbed everyone with Nana Shimura's quirk and lifted everyone off the ground. At that moment, Deku remembered how other students taught him how to control various quirks similar to his new abilities, where Uraraku taught Deku how to fly with his power. There was also a conversation between Bakugo and All Might about the fact that everyone will sooner or later find out about Deku's power, and that Bakugo helps him to atone for bullying him in the past. Well, in reality, Deku, turning on 100% of his strength, began to attack Shigaraki, holding him with fetters. And Bakugo realized that Deku would soon get tired, and therefore decided to raise the prospector to him so that he would finish off Shigaraki with one blow, and Shoto would cool him down. In the end, he raised Endeavor, and he burned Shigaraki with a powerful attack, but the villain's body was able to withstand it. Shigaraki unexpectedly took control of All for One, calling Deku a brother. And then he tried to destroy Deku, but Bakugo turned on and pushed his friend, thereby taking the blow on himself. Then Shoto grabbed him. Deku, having heard the words All for One about the fact that today a lot of people suffered in vain, turned on rage and began to be covered with strength. It flew up to Shigaraki's body and was about to destroy it. But All for One touched him and began to siphon power. And we were transferred to the consciousness of quirks, where there were Deku, Shigaraki, and the All for One that had grown into him, which reminded Shigaraki that if he had not lent him the power, then he would not be here alive. Shigaraki, in response, said that this was not so, because he did everything on his own. But Deku at that time tried to move, but fell, and Nana Shimura appeared above him. She said that for now, Deku can't move in this world, so they will take care of him. Well, All for One said that everything happens here in the same way as with transplanted organs, since a part of the soul is transplanted along with them. And the same thing happens with the transferred quirks. Shigaraki, meanwhile, remembered Gran Torino's words about Nana Shimura's insults. After that, he attacked everyone out of anger, but Shimura repulsed the attack. Also, Shigaraki tried to destroy All for One, but this did not work out. And then Deku saw in Shigaraki the suffering of a child. After that, the first appeared and told his brother that they would never leave the body of this child, and they threw Shigaraki back. And then All for One invited his student to join their forces, and he also began to blame Deku for the fact that he, like All Might, was losing strength because of his anger. But the first said that this is not so, because Deku's anger gives strength to protect those who are dear to him. Hearing this, Deku was able to jump towards Shigaraki and their bond was severed. Based on what now? All for One told Shigaraki to retreat and finish his body in order to destroy everyone later. It also turned out that Gigantomachia, after breaking the connection, sensed the presence of the second owner, and he continued on his way there. Well, in the cities on his way, evacuation began, where so far all the heroes were busy with this. Nijero, along with Ingenium, went to the prospector to give him information. Meanwhile, on the back of the giant, Dabi realized that Shigaraki had awakened, and therefore the end of the heroic world had come. And everyone agreed with this, except for Toga, who will give her answer after talking with some heroes. Also, she still does not understand where the line is between heroes and villains, because now heroes also destroy. After that, she, seeing Uraraka, took her equipment from the compress and went to her. There, she pretended to be an old woman and lured Uraraka into a building, where she asked if Uraraka wanted to destroy Toga. But she only answered her that she did not have time for this, because she needed to save as many people as possible, and now she is no longer the weak girl she was. And they started a fight with Toga, where Toga explained that her quirk prevents her from living among ordinary people. And also there, during the battle, Toga got the keychain of All Might, and she realized that this thing was important for Uraraku. And she compared her to the importance of Twice, because he was like an older brother to her. But suddenly Asui appeared, and Togu, taking advantage of the giant's run, disappeared. And she decided to return to the League and stop suppressing her feelings. Meanwhile, after Shigaraki and Deku separated, Deku picked up Shoto. And Shigaraki inside himself began to fight with All for One, as he did not want to do what he was told. But Ida and Nejiro appeared, and a giant had also arrived here by this time. Shoto and Nejiro decided to finish off Shigaraki while there was time, but did not have time, as the giant attacked them. And then he asked Shigaraki what to do, but the boss was already unconscious. Based on what Dabi took advantage of the moment, and he washed off the dye from his hair and revealed to the prospector and Shoto his real name, Toya Todoroki. The Fire family was in shock because Toya is the eldest child in the Todoroki family, who was burned in a fire. And also in parallel with his words, the skeptic, having hacked into television, began to show the whole of Japan a video prepared by Dabi, where he told everyone that he was the son of the prospector, and this was confirmed by a DNA test. And he, as a villain, has already destroyed 30 innocent people. And he did all this since his father once went crazy to overtake All Might, and so his first son Toya appeared, who, although he even possessed a fiery quirk stronger than Prospector's, however, he did not live up to his father's expectations, and therefore, according to Toya, he was abandoned and forgotten. But since then, he has not forgotten anything. He has been watching all this time in order to take revenge on his father. And now the goal of his life is the suffering of the prospector, since he can no longer get away from the past. Well, this again proves that the blue flame drives people crazy, because Dabi decided to repeat the fate of Azula. We were shown moments from the past, where the prospector near the mountain discovered that his son Toya had been burned in a forest fire. They could not even find his bones, as they could have burned to the ground due to the high temperature. And they explained to us that Toya possessed a strong flame, but his body, instead of being immune to fire like the prospector, received immunity to ice like his mother. The prospector was glad that he had such a son. However, he kept making babies to get the perfect mix of quirks. Toya, on the other hand, seems to have become obsessed with proving to everyone that he is the one who can defeat All Might. However, after each use of his quirk, he was left with burns. And the prospector, worrying about him, asked him not to torture himself anymore and live a normal life. And the prospector himself continued to experiment, where as a result, he managed to do what he wanted. It was Shoto. We were brought back to reality, where Dabi showed everyone the picture received from the skeptic, where the hawk destroys Twice. And he also made inquiries somewhere on the hawk that his father was a bandit and a villain, and the hawk supposedly hid it all. And he also said that the hawk, in order to get into the League of Villains, destroyed the hero best genes. And he said all this to undermine people's faith in heroes. The prospector was shocked by what he heard, because when his son Toya died, he tried to find him, but could not, and he really thought that his son was dead. And right on the field, the prospector went into himself. Toya decided to take advantage of this, and he attacked. Shoto began to fight with him, who at the same time tried to bring his father to his senses so that he would protect Deku and Bakugo. But suddenly, at the last moment, Live Best Jeans appeared. He immediately twisted the giant and all the villains with his threads. It turns out that Best Jeans was in reserve for Chukachi's plan, and he is the last hope for saving the world. However, Dabi used his fire and was able to burn the threads as well as fry Best Jeans and Nejiro. Shigaraki began to dream and talk in his sleep, and he told the Gigantomachia that he needed to destroy them, and because the giant began to break out of the threads. Best Jeans tried to restrain him, but his body could not stand it anymore, and at the call of Shigaraki, the Nomu came running, with whom the heroes fought. But Mirio unexpectedly came to the rescue, who through Eri was able to regain his strength, and he started attacking Nomu while protecting Best Jeans. He was also joined by an injured but mad Bakugo, along with Ida and Nijiro. They started fighting Nomu as a group, while Best Jeans held off everyone else. Shoto, at that time, fought with Tuya, who was trying to break the moral side of his brother, but Deku intervened there. He explained that the past cannot be changed, but now he chooses to look at the current real prospector, who helps people and makes him stronger as a mentor. But while they were discussing it all, the giant broke the threads. However, by the same moment, the prospector, having heard Deku's words, perked up and attacked the giant with all his might, from which the anesthetics thrown earlier worked in his body, and the giant collapsed to the ground and fell asleep. After that, Compress decided to save everyone, who at the beginning remembered the old days where the League lived in poverty, and they were supported by the idea of changing the world. And Compress decided to sacrifice himself to put on the ultimate escape show. To free himself from the threads of Best Jeans, he canned a part of his body to free his hands. After that, he began to preserve all the villains and save them from the threads, at the same time beating Best Jeans and conserving his clothes. He also did all this since he was a descendant of the King of Thieves, Haramoji, who was similar to Robin Hood. He destroyed corrupt heroes and gave money to people. Compress now believes that Shigaraki will change the world just as Harima tried to change it. On top of that, Shoto lost to Dabi, and Compress mothballed him too. He also tried to give Spinner time to wake up Shigaraki and give orders to the giant, and as a result, they managed to bring him to his senses, and he threw everyone away with an energy wave. But it turned out that it was All for One who decided to intervene in the situation as Shigaraki refused to back down. And the more Shigaraki clings to the old, the more All for One becomes in his body, because now they are one with him. He also summoned Noma to him with this wave, and sitting on them, began to run away. Deku tried to stop him, but he pushed him back and said that when he finished Shigaraki's body, they would meet with him again. And also Compress threw a spinner ball at the villains, and they safely rode away with Nomu, and the Compress himself was captured by the heroes. As a result, this battle ended in catastrophic losses on the part of the heroes. And also, a couple of days before the start of the operation, the Security Committee, to which Yastreb reports, tried to take control of Redestro and his Detonaret company by inviting him to a meeting. But in the end, instead of the real Redestro, a clone of Twice came to the meeting, who destroyed the chairman of the committee. And by the time the operation began, the committee was in real chaos. They also explained to us that of the villains during the operation, Compress, Gigantomachi, Mr. Doctor, and the Snowman, who was defeated by Cementus, were captured, and one of the leaders of the front was also captured. Redestro in the mansion was destroyed by the Strelok, and 16,929 villains who came to the front meeting were also captured, and 132 villains were able to escape after the giant. And now the police all over the country have launched raids to find all the leaders of the Liberation Front. And also a lot of heroes, after Dabi's video and the subsequent insult from people, left their hero posts and started looking for other jobs. We were also informed that Majestic and Midnight died during the attack on the mansion. Well, the doctor explained to us that then Shigaraki was resurrected because of his dreams and hatred, which led to such large losses among the heroes. However, All for One, taking advantage of the devastation in the heroic world, decided to use Shigaraki's body to get to his body and destroy the Tartar prison. There are 6 types of cells in this prison, and the most malicious villains are kept at the lowest levels deep underwater. And it turns out that the body of All for One is kept at a depth of 500 meters. But this did not stop him from using the synchronism between his minds and quirks, and turn off the prison's defense system, and then open all the cells from the inside. As a result, in just a few minutes, the most powerful prison fell, and the entire villainous elite broke free, including Steen, Chisaki, and even one of the best assassins, who was lured to his side by All for One. After breaking into a powerful prison, All for One decided to go to 6 more prisons and more than 10,000 villains turned out to be free. Also, All for One made it clear to Shigaraki's followers that he intended to fulfill Shigaraki's dreams and change the world. In the meantime, they must protect him while he recovers. Meanwhile, Bakugo in the hospital came to his senses and began to find out how the others were feeling. He was told that Shigaraki had escaped, while Gran Torino and Aizawa survived and had already recovered. Prospector and Shoto are also already recovering. And at the moment, only Deku still hasn't regained consciousness. Bakugo decided to go to him so that if he suddenly died unexpectedly, beat him for it. And he also learned about the whole crowds of people who are now near the hospital and expressed their dissatisfaction with the heroes. Meanwhile, Hawk and Best Jeans were driving to Hawk's mother's house, and the bird remembered his past, where his father was hiding with his family in an abandoned house for destroying a person for money. But as a result, he was captured by the police, and Hawk's mother, worried that she would be imprisoned, began to hide. But they were found by people from the committee, who offered her a deal where the mother would have to cut off any ties with her talented son and turn him over to the committee. In return, they will take care of her life on themselves. The mother agreed to this, and the Hawk said goodbye to his real name and was made a special hero. They also explained the situation with Best Jeans, where then, after meeting with the Hawk, he was sent into suspended animation with the help of technology in the central hospital, so that Dabi would believe in his death. And after his body was kept in the laboratory of villains, where the Hawk at the right time awakened him. And since now the entire police is busy searching for the escaped villains, lawlessness reigns in the cities and everyone does what he wants, and people's discontent is only growing. This caused many hero agencies to shut down and stop doing business, and already about half of the population does not trust their lives to heroes. Meanwhile, the heroes got to the house of Hawk's mother, who, it turns out, left the house and left a letter where she said that Dabi learned information about her son through her, and in order not to harm anyone else, she decided to leave. Well, because of all this, Hawk realized that since the committee no longer exists, then he will now do as he sees fit. Now he is going to help Endeavor fix the situation with heroic authority and with his family moments. Meanwhile, in the cities, chaos really took place, where one part of the people was engaged in robberies, and the other part of the people used the Detonarat weapon to protect themselves. Well, the prospector still could not come to his senses after the information from his eldest son, and in order to understand this situation, his wife and children came to him, who said that what happened to Toya was also their fault, so they began to discuss it. And we were shown the prospector's memories of the history of the creation of the Todoroki family, where the young prospector came to woo the family of his future wife Ri, who, in turn, understood that this was a marriage of convenience, and her once great family would only benefit from the union with the prospector. And now the prospector, after an unsuccessful attempt with Toya, continued to make children until Shoto appeared. Tuya, on the other hand, began to withdraw into himself and try to prove to his father that he could defeat All Might. But the prospector tried to bring him back to reality so that his son could live an ordinary life, because the guy's whim burns his body. But Tuya did not back down. He even once tried to attack little Shoto out of jealousy. But the prospector guarded the boy as his secret weapon, which instead of childhood received continuous restrictions in communication with the family and endless training. Well, by this time, Toya already partially resembled the current Dabi, who was simply obsessed and did not listen to anyone, including his mother, who, because Toya was in burns, because she did not stop him, was attacked by an angry prospector. And Ri also began to break down the psyche due to the actions of the prospector, and she began to see Shoto as the prospector, whom she was also afraid of. And she automatically confused Shoto's look with the prospector and burned the guy's face. And already in the psychiatric hospital, she found out about Toya's death. It turned out that then Toya discovered a blue and already stronger flame in himself, and he called his father to the mountain to show him this. But he did not come there, which caused anger in his son. And he, having created a flame, could not control it. And as a result, what happened, where Toya turned into Dabi. And now he is waiting for the moment when the prospector will again appear in public to see how he suffers. Best Jeans and Hawk came to the prospector's room to report that the government has requested help from other countries, but due to the devastation in the security department, the heroes will not arrive soon. In this connection, they suggested that the three best heroes team up, and also they cannot ignore Dabi's performances, and they will need to give answers to the journalists. But first, Hawk wants to know what One for All is. The prospector replied that he did not know, but he remembered Deku, and they decided to talk to him. Meanwhile, Deku was in his mind at a meeting with the owners of One for All. They decided to urgently talk to Deku before he woke up. They couldn't do that before, but 4 months ago, One's quirk began to develop, and an encounter with All for One brought them closer to Deku. In this connection, the conversation was started by the 4th owner of Shinomori's quirk. He is also a local Spider-Man, since Deku used his quirk Spider Sense in the last battle. He once hid from All for One and was a hermit, where he passed away from old age. And Shinomori was second only to All Might in terms of the duration of using One for All. He hid for 18 years and developed a quirk, but then his body gradually began to crack, and they eventually found out together that this is due to the presence of several quirks in the body. But the first added that those who had a quirk for a short time died in battle due to the consequences. But All Might and Deku are special because they didn't have their own quirk, and therefore they can use One for All without consequences for themselves. This is because a body born with a quirk cannot accept One for All, and it turns out that the power is maximally revealed in a person who does not have a quirk, which means that Deku is either the last One for All bearer, or he will need to find a worthy person without a quirk in the future. The carriers moved on to the next topic, where Deku will have to destroy Shigaraki, because his hatred can no longer be cured, but All for One raised him like that, and already 4 times All for One tried to steal One for All, but he could not do it, so now he is looking for new ways. Well, Nana Shimura added on her own that this needs to be done, even though Shigaraki is her grandson, but if he finally turns into a monster, then he will no longer be stopped. And they understand that they are putting it all on the shoulders of a teenager, but they have no other options. However, Deku refused to be destroyed, because then, in the mind of Quirks, he noticed that Shigaraki was suffering like a child inside. He also believes that One for All was created to save, not to destroy, and he wants to try to save Shigaraki. But later it turned out that it was just Deku's test, where the first said that they would fully support the guy. And that was the end of their conversation. Well, in the meantime, Hawk and Best Jeans came to Deku and the Almighty in the ward, who immediately said that they wanted to talk about One for All, because this name was now very much smashed by the media. The prospector also said that now Shigaraki is hunting Deku, and the Hawk came here to verify the data, because now they are not only fighting evil, but also fighting for the honor of all heroes with society. And as a result, the Almighty said that he would tell them the whole truth, but in a different place. 3 days passed, but the panic among the people did not subside. In this connection, Prospector, Best Jeans, and Hawk went public to confirm and partially refute Debbie's words. They also said that since there are now many times fewer heroes, they will reduce the protected area with heroes. The refuge for all civilians will be the Yui School, where the families of the students have already been moved. And also the prospector asked to blame only him for everything that happens, and leave those who risk their lives to save others alone. He also told everyone that he didn't know anything about One for All. Meanwhile, Deku's body recovered and seemed to be strengthened. It turns out that the body is pumped along with the power of One for All. His past wounds were almost all healed without a trace. Well, and most importantly, after being discharged from the hospital, he decided to leave Yui so as not to endanger others, because the villains will even come there for him. In this connection, he wrote letters to all his classmates and described there the whole situation about the power of All for One. Then we were shown the situation in the city, where people stopped relying on their heroes and began to create communities, defending themselves and using weapons. The Muscle, who was helped to free himself by All for One, began to fight with the 3rd year of the Ketsubutsu School Yo Shindo with the heroic name Grand, where Yo was smashed into the ground. But suddenly a homeless Deku appeared, who saved Yo, and as a result easily destroyed the Muscle using 45% of his strength. He also tried to find out from Muscle where Shigaraki and All for One were, but he didn't know anything, and he was simply ordered to do whatever he wants. In this connection, Deku handed him over to the police. It was then explained to us that Deku had recently received equipment from the US so that he could use 100% of his quirk's power and not damage his limbs. And he also catches villains to find out where Shigaraki is, because after the release of prisoners from prisons, he and other villains from the front lay low. Well, the heroes supported Deku in this matter, since they understand that even if Tartarus was destroyed by the villains without problems, then the Yui School would not survive either, so they are also in favor of being the first to attack the villains, but now it only remains to find them. Well, now it turns out that Deku collects information and stands guard over the peace of people, and he can also use almost all the quirks of previous one for all carriers at the same time. Meanwhile, Deku saves a giant girl from civilians who have already attacked everyone who looks strange, and it turns out that almost everyone who wanted to was evacuated to Yui. And in the process of all this, the first persuaded 2 more carriers, who for some reason were turned away to the wall, to help them in the fight against All for One. And they both agreed. As a result, this deuce of heroes opened up Deku's access to their quirks. Well, in parallel with this, distrust of the heroes grew more and more, and the detonators Redestro more and more distributed their weapons to people. And although our heroes understood that Shigaraki's body was not yet ready, and according to Mr. Doctor, he needed another 3 months, a new problem arose. Mercenaries sent by All for One began to come after Deku. The first mercenary was Hawkeye's former mentor, whom he told Deku about and warned that she was super dangerous. Her name is Lady Negant. She is considered the best shooter in Japan. Her secret is in the bullets she creates from her hair. She has a barrel in her hand, and she can create absolutely any kind of bullets and control them. And with her first shot, Deku shattered the sensor that All Might and the others were tracking him with. But Deku did not listen to the Hawk and decided to counterattack this lady. At this point, Lady Negant remembers how, during a prison break, she was recruited by All for One, offering her a levitation quirk for work. She also took with her the armless Chizaki, who knows Deku by sight, and they made an agreement. If he helps her, she will help him meet his father, since Chizaki wants to apologize to him. And Negant herself once worked in the security committee and was engaged in all the black work of the committee to eliminate all corrupt heroes and villains. But the committee hid all this and showed only the bright side of the coin. But when Negant was about to quit this, she was not allowed to do so. And then Negant destroyed everyone, in connection with which she ended up in Tartarus. Meanwhile, in reality, Deku uses his spider sense and leg quirk to dodge bullets at the speed of light. Then Negant decided to play on heroic kindness. She fired a bullet straight at Chizaki, who had run out onto the roof, to distract Deku. However, he, using all his quirks, was able to outrun the bullet and save the villain. And then, with a powerful leg attack, he broke the trunk of this lady. Deku also realized that Negant was still on the side of the heroes, because she could immediately immobilize Deku and take him to All for One, but she did not. He invited her to change and again take the side of the heroes, because she already knows the whole inner kitchen. However, All for One suspected that Negant could betray, and therefore hedged it and blew it up. Then the Hawk suddenly appeared and picked up the falling Negant. He tried to explain to the mentor that not everything is lost in her life, because he himself is now in her place. And if it were not for faith in people, then he would have broken too. As a result, she emotionally revealed the place where she was supposed to deliver Deku in 2 months. This is Hivari Castle. She also said that several other mercenaries were tasked with delivering Deku. After that, the prospector flew there, removed Chizaki from the roof, who said that he needed to see his father in order to apologize. But Deku suggested that the villain first send his apologies to AII, and then he would help Chizaki with a meeting with his father. Also, the Almighty appeared there, who was also attacked before, but he frightened the villains with his coolness, and they fled. After these events, Deku and the rest of the heroes arrived at the same castle, where it turned out that All for One was waiting for them. He left them a video where he said that now he no longer needs All Might. He will now hunt Deku. And he also blew up the castle at the end of the video, but the heroes somehow managed not to get hurt. And also after the heroes discussed the actions of All for One and realized that he did not seem to want Deku to be despised by people. Therefore, he does not reveal to everyone the secret that Deku has one for all. Meanwhile, upon returning to the city, Deku suffered another attack by a mercenary, but he destroyed it alone without any problems. In turn, All Might tried with all his might to cheer up Deku, as now he has a large load on him. And in his understanding, the main thing is that the guy now does not break morally. However, Deku had already begun to go insane, and he left All Might ugly without a word and went to live on the streets alone. All this is due to the fact that Deku stopped eating, sleeping, visiting adult sites, and stopped listening to the advice of the previous owners of the quirk. And all this because of his lack of understanding of the current state of affairs. However, he still wants to complete One for All and restore the world. And when Deku was already at the limit, he was attacked by the escaped villain puppeteer, who can take people under control and fight with them like a human shield. However, Deku came to the aid of his classmates, who immediately destroyed the puppeteer. It turns out that after receiving the letter, the students decided of their own free will not to leave Deku in a difficult situation. And in order to find him, they went to Director Yui. They told him everything, and he helped them with the invitation of the prospector, to whom they also explained everything using the example of the Almighty, who, saving the world, completely forgot about himself, which led to the fact that the world was left without the power of the Almighty. And so, through the heroes, they found Deku in order to return him to the protection of Yui, so that he could at least rest and come to his senses. But Deku refused to go to school and put everyone in danger. He tried to escape using his Rasta quirk, but Bakuvu cleared the smoke. He then tried to jump out with his threads, but Zero grabbed him. Also immediately, Deku attacked Jiro with her sound, and he was grabbed by Tailed Beast. But Deku continued to resist, and Takayami joined in to hold him. Yoirozu also created shackles for Deku. However, it didn't work, as Deku turned on his quirks and escaped without much trouble. And although our guy understood that everyone is now worried about him, he does not want to risk them. And also there, in the process, his mask flew off, and immediately after he was frozen by Shoto. He, like the other students, began to talk about how Deku had changed his life. And so they are all ready to share his heavy load with Deku now, and help find All for One. And they all want to fight side by side with Deku, but he broke free again, and turning on his quirk, began to run away. Uraraku tried to stop him, but she did not have time, and then Shoto and Bakugo joined. They dispersed the ball with Bakuga and Ida. Eventually, they were able to catch up with Deku, where Ida grabbed his arm. And then a second carrier of the quirk joined their conversation, who said that Deku needs people with the same views as his, and who are ready to continue to run alongside him. And Deku flew down with Ida as he ran out of strength. And already there he was caught by Kirishima, who finished off the guy by reminding him of the case when his classmate without a quirk protected a person without a quirk. And Deku after these words was touched, but he said that he would not mind returning, but he was afraid, because there are so many people in Yui who could suffer because of him. Also, Bakugo joined their conversation, who told his story about Deku and his power. And he said that even though Deku does almost everything perfectly in his opinion, however, he alone in this state cannot reach the ideal and defeat All for One, so they want to help him. And Deku replied that they had already surpassed him, collapsed to the ground. And as a result, they went to Yui, where the director explained that now the school is even better protected than Tartarus, because it is not just a protected land, and each sector has a magnetic cushion engine that will help the sector to go underground under protection in case of danger 3,000 plates. And you can even get to the Ketsubutsu school in the sector, with which these passages are connected. The students, along with Deku, approached the walls of Yui, where at the entrance they were met by a crowd of people who were against Deku being in Yui, since they know that villains are hunting him. But in the end, the heroes managed to persuade people to let Deku in, because people realized that before they were just spectators, whom the heroes guarded for the sake of glory. But now everything has changed, because now they are protected not for the sake of glory, but just like that. And if they do not support the heroes now, then the old days will never return. And on top of that, Deku also promised that he would do everything possible to return peacetime. Meanwhile, the headmaster informed Aizawa about everything that was happening with his students and his former friend Kurajiri, who was secretly transported to the central hospital so that Aizawa would try to bring him back to our world. And it also turns out that the school created protection against Toga, because they found out how long her transformation works, and each refugee is checked on time. Well, the Almighty at that time decided not to sit idle, and he went to put pressure on those who refused to evacuate with authority. Steen watched him from the side. When the hero reached the square where his statue was, he found Deku's mask, as well as Steen, who refused to believe that All Might was in front of him, even after he showed his hero form for a second. However, the villain still deceived, because when the girl appeared, whom All Might had once saved from All for One during the battle in Kamino, and she now comes and cleans up the traces of vandalism. Stain explained to the Almighty that people value him not for his strength, but for his principles. And this fire gave hope to many, and this fire must not go out. And proceeding from what Stain, in tribute to the Almighty, gave the data from Tartarus to the Almighty, which the dying guard gave him and asked him to transfer them to an honest person. And also Stain asked the Almighty to come for his life after he figured it all out, because he destroyed 40 heroes. And Stain did all this for the sake of a more just world. After that, we were taken back to the school, where the class of students were busy cleaning up Deku to bombard him with questions later. But Shoto slowed everyone down, because Deku needs to get some sleep. However, Deku remembered that he ugly left All Might without even saying goodbye to him. But it turns out that he was already at that time near their house. And already on the street, he apologized to Deku for the fact that he could not help him. In addition, he said that the last fight is coming soon, and they have received data that will help them answer many questions, and getting an answer would require the strength of absolutely everyone, including the Almighty. Well, Deku apologized for trying to do everything himself, because only together they can win. Then All Might went to Endeavor and others who are outside the school so as not to cause discontent among the people. Deku himself went to bed, and the students decided to come up with a musical number, as they did at the festival, in order to cheer people up. It also turned out that the heroes from the villain's interrogation found out that All for One wants one for all before Shigaraki's body is finished. Also in the data transmitted by Stain was information about the cause of the failure in the Tartar system, and this will help strengthen the protection of Yui. And the heroes also realized that the consciousness of All for One and Shigaraki was synchronized. All Might explain to everyone that he could also one-sidedly communicate with the owners of One for All, but he couldn't hear the answer, although he could feel feelings through them. And they also intercepted the villainous signals, where it was said that in 38 days it would all be over. And this means that in 3 days Shigaraki's body will be ready, and now they need to figure out how they will deal with it. To do this, they need the help of heroes from other countries where the people of All for One have already penetrated. And there are many heroes who are already ready to come to the rescue, but because of the bureaucracy, they are still waiting for the decisions of the government. However, there are those who immediately responded. It was the disciple of the Almighty, Star and Stripe. All Might was her mentor, and she is the #1 hero in America. She received the teacher's message and immediately went to Japan. If you want to continue, then write about it in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like and press the bell so as not to miss new videos. AniMap was with you. Bye everyone.